Jingri Jimbalungs, Nai Cobble Cobble Warren, Nai Bugagin Yaman, Nai Guju, Nai Kabul, Nai Waka Waka, Kumba Mary Niyen, Ruben Niyen, Brendan Niyen.
Thank you. I'm Mr. Haynes and this is Mr. Davis. On behalf of our group, we would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land we are filming this video on, the Kumba people. We would also like to pay our respect to their elders past and present.
G'day students, Mr. Parr here with Mr. Policing. Today, alongside with some other teachers, we will be bringing you a new science unit. We will be focusing on the effects of the introduced invasive species that were brought only to benefit humans. In particular, the introduced bees that were brought to Australia and the effects they have had on our native wildlife.
Over the centuries, humans' way of living has advanced so far, with new fancy cars and iPhones making our lives easier. We kind of forgot how that might affect other living things and the natural world. I'll pass it on to Mr. Haynes and Mr. Davis to talk more about kind of the post-humanistic way of living.
Thank you, Mr. Polisi. As he was saying just before, the way that we are currently living has had some really bad effects on other living things and the natural world. So, the challenge is on us to find other ways to live where both other living things and the natural world can flourish.
These ways of living can focus on how we sustainably survive without hurting other living things that are on this planet. Speaking of sustainability, I'm now going to pass this on to Mr. Van Eck, and he's going to talk about the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals.
Cheers, Mr. Haynes. The United Nations Sustainable Development Goals contain 17 goals which have been set to achieve the challenge that Mr. Davis spoke about before. The learning activities you will be exploring and the assessment you'll be doing is based on the impacts of introduced species toward native species. This topic is closely linked to Goal 15, Life on Land, which focuses on protecting, restoring and promoting sustainable ways to live for other living things and natural world to flourish.
For our new unit, we'll be looking at how our native species have been impacted by the introduction of invasive species, focusing on our native Australian bees and introduced species of bees.
In this unit, firstly, we will be learning everything about our Australian native bee species. This part of the unit will focus on the life cycle, lifestyles, habitats, and the impacts the Australian native bee species have on our local environments. The purpose of this part is to introduce the topic and for you to all learn about our native bees and how important they are to our local environments. Now, I'll pass it on to Mr. Haynes, who will explain the next part of your learning.
Gamba Ninja, Mr. Parr. In the next part of the unit, we're going to delve into the differences between the introduced and the invasive species of honeybees found in Australia. The purpose of this part of the unit will be for you to identify, justify and explain the key features and traits of Australian native bees and the invasive local species. Through learning about their key features and traits, we will be learning about why they have these attributes with potential links to Australian diverse ecosystems. Mr. Van Eck will talk to you about this now.
Thanks, Mr. Haynes. Continuing on our exploration for knowledge of invasive species, we're going to learn about invasive bees and how they affect the native animals and nature. This is integral to the unit as it explains and justifies our reasoning for doing this, as invasive bees disrupt and cause problems to Australia's ecosystem. This further ties into the ideas that we talked about at the start of the video as we explored the impacts of human-made decisions on other living things and our natural world. Your assessment of this unit will now be covered by Mr. Davis.
Gamba Ninjas, Mr. Van Eck. Now, after all the content has been covered, you'll be working in groups of 4 to create a poster to communicate a solution for the problems that have been caused by the invasive bee species. Now, in this poster, you'll need to explain and justify your solutions as to why it's best for not only the native bee species, but also the local environment. For this task, you'll be able to research online for resources, but your teachers will also be providing resources for you, so you'll have enough information to complete this task. Through completing this assessment, you'll be showing your understanding of the content being taught, but you'll also be given the chance to display your critical and creative thinking and your collaborative working skills.
Year 3s and 4s, thank you so much for watching. We look forward to your learnings and the creations of your posters.
Yinande!